We've gathered here to discuss what's happening today in Donbass. I'll briefly remind you how it all began, although you already know. Nevertheless, I'll do it to have the full picture that could help us make appropriate decisions. So, after the coup in Ukraine in 2014, a part of the country's population didn't accept the coup. Let me remind you that it was unconstitutional and bloody, because many innocent people died as a result. It was indeed an armed coup. No one doubts that. As I've said, some people didn't accept the coup. That is related to those who lived in Crimea, as well as those who lived or live in Donbass today. The people announced that they were forming two independent republics, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. That's when the confrontation between Kiev authorities and people living in the territories began. From the very beginning, Russia has been doing everything possible to peacefully resolve all the conflicts. Nevertheless, the Kiev authorities carried out military punitive operations on the territories twice. And it looks like we're witnessing aggravation of the situation for the third time. All these years, people living in these territories were actually mocked. Constant shelling, blockade. As you know, people living in the territories close to the so-called front line were forced to move to the basement and live there alone, together with their children. During the negotiation process, a peace plan emerged, which is called the Minsk Package of Measures. However, later it became clear that today's authorities in Kiev are not willing to implement it. Moreover, they publicly and repeatedly said that.
We have assessed the reaction to the proposals on security guarantees that Russia submitted to the US and NATO last December. We received their response in late January. Analysis of this response shows that our Western colleagues are not prepared to accept our key proposals, in particular the ones related to stopping NATO's eastward expansion. We've got the impression that our Western colleagues are trying to disperse Russia's proposals. They want to single out secondary proposals that are nevertheless very important to us. Proposals that would help continue the dialogue and reduce the risks, but at the same time won't infringe on the US and its allies' core interests, such as NATO enlargement. We can say that there is some progress. It is minor, but it is there. Our consistency and committed determination to promote the December initiatives have given the US and its allies something to think about and forced them to reconsider a number of Russian proposals they have previously rejected on de-escalation of tensions and arms control. In our response, we have highlighted the integrity of the Russian initiative.
Due to the actions of sabotage groups and artillery attacks, the people of Donetsk don't have access to water. At least 90% of the city's population. As for Lugansk, there is no gas supply in 2/3 of the city. Almost all the residents living in the areas along the contact line have to evacuate. However, some of them, those who work at essential enterprises that can't stop operating, have to remain there. And these people are suffering. A shell hit a bus stop today, killing a miner. There have been a total of over 40 shelling attacks in just one night, on all fronts. All these artillery attacks, as we see it and as our military experts report to us, are planned to hit specific targets. These attacks are not spontaneous. We are dealing with aimed fire, fire for effect, and they know what they want to hit.
We proceed from the fact that the situation has not changed over the past 8 years. Moreover, despite efforts from other countries to help resolve this issue, Kiev continues to sabotage all the commitments it has undertaken. Mr. Putin, we are therefore asking you to consider the current request by the State Duma and recognize the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics.
For 7 years, we have witnessed a humanitarian disaster unfolding in the middle of Europe. All these years we have seen real genocide, blockade, non-payment of pensions and benefits. And in all these 7 years, Russia has been a vocal supporter, in a very consistent manner and on all levels, of a political, diplomatic solution to Ukraine's internal conflict. A solution that would effectively end the civil war going on there. But our voice was ignored at all platforms, including the inter-parliamentary dialogue. No one listened to us. It was just pretense that the Minsk Accords were being implemented, with all the countless but useless contact group meetings. And it became clear that the puppet regime in Kiev is not only unwilling, but also completely unable to do anything. I agree that the threat of sanctions is painful, it is very nasty indeed. But listen, they are calling Russia an aggressor, but we have never introduced any sanctions against Ukraine and we are still supplying energy to Ukraine, we and Belarus, and also petrol that is used by tanks sent to the border with the DPR and LPR. We continue supplying gas and many other things to Ukraine. I believe the time is ripe. We can't wait any longer. We have to decide now.
We cannot remain indifferent and watch for 8 years our fellow citizens, our people being mistreated. So I see no other way. As for suggestions to give the West a couple of days to change their minds, there is no harm in that, but we all know that they won't.
It's 2022. For 8 years, people of all ages have been living in basements there. The next page in this book tells the story of weapons being pumped into Ukraine, a process that is going on for unknown reasons and purposes, since Ukraine already has plenty of weapons, so many in fact, that they will suffice for a great many conflicts, of any scale and intensity, that they have been starting so stubbornly on the DPR and LPR soil. But we have seen 4, 5 or sometimes even 8 deliveries of most advanced weapons per day. And when they tell us that these are defensive weapons, we find it difficult to believe javelins can be called that. I think that they left us no choice. So I definitely say yes, we need to recognize the republics.